I tried beating Terraria, but every enemy explodes on death. And the further we get into the game, the more devastating the explosions become. Will I be able to defeat Mr. Squid God, or will I blow up my entire world trying? Well, let's find out. I started off by chopping down trees, and upon killing my very first slime, it ended up dropping a bunch of bouncy bombs. Meaning that I don't even have to chop down the trees, and honestly the slime kind of just broke them down for me, so I guess it's a win for me. I killed the worm, it dropped a bunch of bombs, and blew an even bigger hole in the ground. I continued chopping trees and tried to get more wood, and upon approaching a bunny, I killed it, dropped a bunch of bombs, and I got myself more wood. Yeah, everything was exploding left to right, and I was gonna have to be really cautious if I didn't want to blow up my entire world before even fighting the Eye of Cthulhu. I went over to the corruption in order to drop some bombs on the corruption orbs because I wanted the meteorite to spawn in. It's probably the fastest way to make progress in Terraria, and I also had bombs for my starter bag. While doing this, I got myself a musket, and while defeating the Eater of Souls, I absolutely wrecked the corruption. I went over to the left ocean, just absolutely destroying everything that got in my way. Every single time I would kill a mob, it would just keep on dropping more and more bombs, like nothing in this world was safe. After I came back to spawn, I decided to start digging myself a elevator, and during this time, I also explored the caverns. I got myself a bunch of various different ores, got myself some life crystals, I made myself a silver pickaxe so we could mine faster, and then I came back to spawn to build myself NPC housing. Using the LuiAFK prison builder, I went to click it, and my entire world crashed, and not only did it crash, I had to reset all of my progress. So I ended up digging out another elevator, I managed to place all of the NPC houses down finally, and then I built myself an arena for the Eye of Cthulhu. I had no idea what to expect when fighting this boss, but I knew that it was gonna be absolutely crazy. I had a musket, so I was fairly confident that we're gonna take the boss out, but I had no idea that it was gonna be as bad as it truly was. As soon as it turned to nighttime, I summoned it in, and every servant we would kill dropped more and more bombs. There was nothing left of our arena, and another thing I noticed is that bouncy bombs actually explode on impact when hitting mobs. This information will come in crucial later to explain the atrocious amount of times I ended up dying. Anyways, after we defeated the Eye of Cthulhu, I used the Spelunker potion to go mining and get myself a bunch of life crystals. I also explored a bunch of caverns in order to get chests and accessories. I got myself a bunch of lead, and after this, I went over to the corruption in order to summon in the Eater of Worlds. I tried to build myself an arena, but I realized that it was practically useless to do that because every single time I built a couple of platforms, I would get raided by mobs and they would just blow everything up. Well, I summoned in the Eater of Worlds, and let me show you exactly how this went. Since this is a worm boss and it's segmented, every single segment managed to drop a bomb, and because of this, we ended up exploding the entire corruption. Also managed to die before I could kill the boss due to fall damage, but at least we got enough resources so that we don't have to fight it again. Once I picked up all the loot, I came back to spawn, crafted myself a nightmare pickaxe, and then continued work on my elevator. I kept on dying to mobs non-stop while trying to dig out the elevator. I got myself a bunch of hellstone and obsidian so we could craft ourselves hellstone bars, and once I came back to spawn, I got myself the fiery greatsword. During this time, I also went to go pick up the meteorite, and then I went over to the jungle to try to get myself the blade of grass. I managed to accidentally break a beehive, which led to a cycle of bees blowing themselves up, leaving a massive crater in the jungle, which was absolutely absurd. My computer actually started lagging because there were so many bombs on screen, and I genuinely thought the game was going to crash. This inevitably summoned in the queen bee, which I ended up dying to. I went back to the jungle, tried to farm out more stingers, but I kept on dying. Upon coming back to the jungle one last time, I got myself all the stingers and jungle spores I needed to craft myself the blade of grass. I got myself more hellstone to get myself a full set of hellstone armor. I made myself the Light's Bane, and now the only thing left for us to get was the Muramasa from Skeletron's dungeon. I went over to defeat Skeletron, and upon breaking both of his hands and letting him damage himself with the bombs, we took out his head and we could finally proceed down to his dungeon without getting absolutely obliterated by the Guardian. The bomb bombs were actually kind of helpful in a way because they would destroy all of the traps and primarily all of the spikes, so we could easily make our way through and around the dungeon. But once I got myself enough water candles and the Muramasa, I came all the way back to spawn. The dungeon was just way too crowded and bombs were extremely dangerous in this part of the world. I crafted myself the Night's Edge, and now my goal was to max out my HP. Using a Spelunker potion, I went mining, got myself as many life crystals as I could find until I was at 400 health. I went down to the underworld, got myself a guide voodoo doll, and then tried to build myself an arena. This had to be the most annoying thing I've ever done because there were mobs spawning in non-stop and they kept on blowing up every single platform that I would finish building to fight the wall of flesh. I decided to just give up and just go with what I have because we didn't really need to prepare this much for the wall of flesh. Anyways, I chucked the guide voodoo doll into the lava, summoned in the wall of flesh, and as always it spawned on the wrong side of the world for some reason, but that wasn't really a problem because we took this boss out extremely quickly. As we killed the hungry, their bombs would drop and they would automatically damage the wall. This dealt almost 3/4 of all of his HP, leaving us with very little damage that we actually needed to deal to kill the wall. So using the Molten Fury, I took it out. I honestly thought I was going to die here, but we are now in hard mode, and because of this, we are going up one level in the explosiveness, bringing us from small to medium. I went to go bless the world with the hard mode ores. We got ourselves cobalt, orichalcum, and titanium, and once the world was blessed, I went through the entire pickaxe progression. I got myself a bunch of cobalt first to craft a cobalt pickaxe, then using the cobalt pickaxe, I crafted myself an orichalcum anvil as well as an orichalcum pickaxe, and then using that, I got myself as much titanium as I could. It was very easy to notice that our explosions were on the medium setting. Every single enemy we now killed exploded like a firework into a barrage of bombs that would fly all over the surrounding area and then explode. This was a big step up from the previous explosions, and this caused me a lot, and I mean a lot of deaths. Once I came back to spawn, I crafted myself full titanium armor. I got myself a godly titanium repeater, and then I went to go farm out harpies and wyverns in hopes of getting a giant harpy feather and in turn a set of harpy wings. This took me forever. Can you guess why? Well, if you haven't seen already, every single harpy we kill just explodes into a barrage of bombs that keep on damaging other harpies around it, causing a vicious cycle of exploding flying enemies. This did make wyverns super easy to defeat, but during this process I died so many times, and you guys don't know how happy I was to just finally craft myself that pair of wings and get this over with. Yeah, by the end of that, there was essentially nothing left of the Sky Island, but now we have to go farm out Souls of Night and Light in order to craft the hard mode boss summons. I also made myself a titanium sword, and while farming for the souls, we absolutely exploded a massive crater in the underground corruption biome. Like, it seemed like a nuclear bomb went off in this area. There was nothing left of it, and same thing of the underground hallowed biome. After our small venture of trying to get some Souls of Light, we essentially left that place destroyed way beyond repair. This is where I genuinely started getting scared because I was anxious that we might actually blow up our entire world before we make any progress to kill the final few bosses. Anyways, I crafted myself the summon for the destroyer, crafted myself the summon for Skeletron, and then just waited for it to turn to nighttime. I had Jester's arrows, so I was fairly confident that we would take out the destroyer fast, but I wasn't ready for what was to come. Before we could do that, the twins actually naturally managed to spawn in, so we took those out, and that didn't really cause too much damage to our world because we only had 2 explosions go off, but the destroyer was a whole different story. As soon as we summoned in the worm, explosions were going off left and right. I did not know what was going on until I caught a glimpse of this madness. Every single segment was exploding. He spawned in a little circle, and since I had Jester's arrows, I pierced a bunch of his columns, and this caused him to just frantically explode into a bunch of bombs. All of his probes were damaging him, and the boss fight lasted an astonishing 5 seconds. We did take him out very quickly, but now we have a completely destroyed spawn. One thing that I tried to utilize is the power of chests being indestructible, so for anything important that I didn't want breaking, I would put a chest on top of it. After this, I repaired as much of spawn as I could and waited for it to turn to nighttime so we could summon in Skeletron prime. Once it was nighttime, I summoned in the skeleton, and this boss fight was fairly basic. I mean, there was nothing too great about it. It was just casual old Skeletron, and he just exploded into a couple of bombs once we took him out. Now the jungle grows restless. Salad boss, I'm coming for you. I went over to the jungle to mine up chlorophyte, and this was horrific. I was literally running away from mobs almost the entire time. I swear to God, I spent more time running than I did actually mining because the explosions were so devastating that I kept on dying non-stop, and after a certain point I got tired of dying and coming back, so I had to start running away if I didn't want to waste all of my money. Anyways, once I had enough chlorophyte and half of my jungle was destroyed, I went to go farm out turtles in order to get myself a full set of turtle armor, and I also got myself the Yelts. During this time, I got myself the Plantera detector, located her bulb, got myself a yo-yo glove so we could actually make full use of the Yelts, but before we could fight the boss, I had another incident where I ran into another beehive and everything around me exploded. This explosion was even worse than before. I genuinely thought my PC was about to explode, but thankfully it did not, and my computer managed to survive this traumatic experience. But after this, I broke Plantera's bulb and then went to fight her. I thought it was gonna be easy, but for some reason she was like half enraged for most of the time, which made her deal an absurd amount of damage, and then her little minions would explode into a barrage of bombs that would damage me a lot, which in the very end caused me to die. I was super frustrated, so I went to go find another Plantera bulb and fight her again. To no one's surprise, I died again, and by this point I knew that I had to do something else because this was just not working. I decided to man up and actually craft a master yo-yo bag instead of just using the glove. I got myself better accessories, got myself more potions, built myself a better arena. I broke her bulb and went to fight her. Now you would think with all this preparation I would have killed Plantera, right? Well, I died again. I genuinely died again, and this is where I got super frustrated. I quit the challenge for a while and had to take a break. Anyways, I went for a final push. I upgraded all my accessories to kind of the best I could really get. I got myself a better reforge on the Yelts, and then I tried to fight Plantera once more. This time I ended up being successful, not without blowing up half the jungle of course, but regardless of that, we still beat Plantera and we could finally try to go take out Golem. I went over to Golem's temple. This was very similar to the dungeon with the close quarters explosions. I did not like it, and with all the mobs here, dying was almost inevitable. I went over to summoning Golem, and using the chlorophyte shortbow, I tried to take him out while keeping distance. During this time, I was using the mobs that were spawning in by his feet to make them explode and deal damage to the boss. As we were about to take off his head, I wasn't careful enough and I managed to die to Golem. Go ahead, laugh at me. I'm not going to be mad at you. What I will be mad at though is if you don't subscribe to the Boio YouTube channel in the next 5 seconds. After this fat L that we took to Golem, I actually decided to go and summon in the solar eclipse in order to get myself the Terra Blade. One thing that I didn't plan for is how much destruction this event was going to cause. I ended up blowing up the entire spawn. After the solar eclipse was over, it looked like somebody started World War III in my Terraria world. There was genuinely nothing left of spawn except for massive craters in the ground. Instead of getting the Terra Blade, I managed to get the Eye of Cthulhu yo-yo. I bought a bunch of buffs and then went over to Golem's temple. Now that we had the Eye of Cthulhu, I decided to refight Golem, and we actually managed to take him out. I took him out a couple more times in order to get myself all of the beetle husks that I needed, and once I came back to spawn, I crafted myself a full set of beetle armor as well as beetle wings. After this, I went over to Skeletron's dungeon in order to fight the lunatic cultist, and this was very interesting. We could actually take out all of his stars while he shot the star attack at us, and this would just drop a full barrage of bombs on him that would deal lots of damage and would help us out a ton, making this boss fight not too difficult. After lunatic cultist, we are now officially on the largest setting of bombs, meaning that every mob we kill drops the largest amount of bombs they possibly can. So first, we went for the solar pillar. After this, I decided to wait on the solar pillar and actually built myself a tiny little laser protection arena from Moonlord. I used the chest that I was talking about last time because if you place a chest and along with this place an item in it, it becomes an indestructible block. I went over to take out the Stardust pillar and we died non-stop to this, but I persisted and then took out the pillar. I next went to go take out the solar pillar, which was the biggest pain of all time, but I did it. And then after this, I crafted myself the solar eruption. I went to go take out the vortex pillar, which was also absolute death. And lastly, I traveled to take out the nebula pillar. Our screen started shaking so I quickly rushed home and got ready under my barrage of chests to hide from moonlord. Thankfully, I was lucky to find out that moonlord didn't actually have anything that would really explode except for the 3 eyes once we took them out. And of course, the core. Meaning that this boss fight isn't going to be as devastating as Plantera or Golem or even the Destroyer, but it was still going to be a challenge. Using the solar eruption, I took out his left hand first, took out his right hand, and then took out his middle eye. Only thing left now was his core, and as soon as I saw that thing open, we breezed through it. I was so excited to finally be on the verge of beating this challenge because I died so many times and I was seeking revenge, boyos. We took out his core, finally defeated moonlord, and we are finally done with this challenge. Be sure to check out another video like this on screen. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Consider subscribing to the channel if you're new. This has been Boyo. Peace out.